Good evening, everybody. We're going to wait another 3 minutes or so, and then we'll start the session. So just be patient and bear with us.
I think we can get going, Andres.
Cool. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our seminar series for 2025, our second seminar. And what I'll do is let me first do a general introduction, and then I'll introduce our speaker. So for those who don't know about a lot about the chapter, basically we a chapter of the International System Dynamics Society. We were founded in 2014, and we're basically a group of volunteers who really have a vision to be globally recognized in system dynamics, but we also want to advance the skills development in developing and African countries. And our objective is to reach every organization and institute in Africa that they can start using system dynamics as a decision support tool. And therefore, our mission is to encourage the growth of system dynamics in Africa and establish capabilities through training, education, digitized support, and do some collaborative engagements. In terms of the Policy Council, we've got Dr. Nalini Pillay. Unfortunately, she's stuck in a spot where the signal might not be great, so I'm going to be running the show tonight. But Nalini is also the organizer of our conference, but more about that later. There's myself, Rudolf Oosthuizen, Corneille de Plooy, who's currently doing his PhD in Belgium, Dr. Jong Sebastian, located in Bloemfontein, and Alazi, who is from Brazil, but in Portugal and all over the world. So yeah, that's our council. Our presentation tonight, or our seminar tonight, is going to be about systems thinking and modeling from local to international research by Dr. Shane Carnuan from the RISE Research Institutes of Sweden. In terms of our upcoming events, very important, on the 24th, we will have a student feedback session. We still have one presenter slot available. If you're PhD or master students that feel that they want to give us some feedback or receive some feedback, please sign up. And then what we'll do is we'll give you an opportunity to present your work and ask us difficult questions. We've already got Dumasani Manzini from the University of Pretoria. And basically, as I said, each of the students gets 15 minutes to present their work, and then we'll do a 30-minute discussion and feedback. And you'll get feedback from an array of people, academics as well as practical system dynamicists. Next event coming up is our Learning Hub. Stream 3 for the year starts on the 8th of July. And basically, we've got 2 evenings of interactive training. We've got 2 evenings of one-on-one feedback or coaching, and then we've got a final presentation. Please, this is open to everybody. We provide you the software for the sessions. Just make sure to, once you've enrolled, to follow the instructions, install the software in time, and make sure if there's any administrative issues that you get those resolved. Then we've got our conference on 6 to 7 November. This year it's going to be fully virtual and free. So it will be our 13th annual System Dynamics Conference. I'm not going to go through all of the detail here, but it's basically we want to talk about systems in action, driving impact through systems modeling. And please, we've opened the call for papers already in March. Please submit your papers, and we accept any level of, any type of work, full papers. We'll take short papers, we take work in progress, but there's also an opportunity for case studies if you're a practitioner. And then if you want to connect with us, our website, systemdynamics.org.za, and you'll get links, all the links that I've mentioned on this page, you'll also find there. And then our South African System Dynamics chapters LinkedIn page. We've got a YouTube channel. And if you send an email to contact@systemdynamics.org.za, it will reach us and we can give you feedback. And now, without further ado, let me go back. I'm going to just give you a quick overview of who Shane is. So just hold on a second. Let me just get that open. And okay, so Shane has been a researcher with the RISE Research Institutes of Sweden since 2021. But he brings experience from previous roles at DTU, the Technical University of Denmark, Dynamondo, William Ruckelshaus Center, and US Aid and Association for Water and Rural Development. He's got a PhD in environmental engineering from the Technical University of Denmark, and he is a participatory process expert and system dynamicist, and he aims to help bridge the gap between science and society to enable sustainable policy development. And his primary interest is in investigating how methods of facilitating group processes supported by powerful simulation tools can be more effective at improving the cooperation among actors in complex socio-environmental systems. I do have one question for Shane before he starts, and that's, what's your hobbies?
Hobbies? Oh, well, it's more of a singular hobby. I got into road biking when I was living in Denmark, and that has pretty much become my main free time activity. It suits really well here in flat southern Europe or southern Sweden as well. So,
thank you, Shane. It's over to you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Andres. Yeah, just get some slides up here, and I have the chat alongside in case there are questions coming during. Good afternoon, evening, everyone. I was excited to get this invitation from Nalini on LinkedIn some weeks ago and thought, what is it that I could present that would be interesting to an audience that I don't know about system dynamics? One of the things that is often on my mind as working in research here in Sweden and since working in Denmark and other places is kind of how is it that people come to work in system dynamics is often quite different from person to person. And how is it a person continues to work in system dynamics is also quite interesting and unique. And I think generally our field can benefit from sharing a little bit more of these insights because yeah, there's a lot of people in discussions in my role with the vice president of membership with the System Dynamics Society. We talk a lot about how it is we continue to make system dynamics attractive as a society, but then that ties very closely to it as a methodology of choice. So it's really great to hear the mission of the South African System Dynamics chapter it aligns along those same themes and ideas to spread and advance system dynamics practice also internationally. So really thrilled to get the invitation. And so I thought, yeah, I would get a little bit of a start here talking about my journey to working as a researcher with system dynamics and be in the fortunate position that I get to apply systems thinking and modeling in my everyday life and work. And then give some examples kind of how that background has led me into my current role and some of the exciting projects that I've gotten to work on since I've been here at RISE, and how different it is working at a research institute compared to working as an academic or working in a defined research role at an NGO like I did when I worked for the Association for Water and Rural Development in South Africa back in 2016, 2017. Yeah, so I think it's a 45-minute presentation, so I'll try and hold myself to that. But in the essence of having time for some questions and interaction, I'll also speed things up a little bit as we go along. So these I kind of organized around different phases that I saw in my own research career. As maybe it reflects a little bit for you. I saw in the chat people that are here that are PhD students, some that are postdocs, some that are researchers. So I think everybody probably has similar phases that they could identify in their own research trajectory. So in early phases here in 2012, 2014, it's really a discovery period when I first found out about system dynamics. Before that, I was studying medicine. And this discovery of system dynamics through my master's project in quantitative modeling and how impactful and interesting and these kind of beautiful insights you could get out of an SD model, even quite a simple model, was really exciting in that period. And I worked at the National Energy Lab for a while in the US. And then that initial interest kind of gave on to this divergent phase. And now I'm borrowing some terminology from group model building. But there I was really in that 4-year period-ish, really learning about what my interests were and learning more about the SD field more broadly. So I had the opportunity to study in the EMSD program, the European Master in System Dynamics, and learn from different universities over in Europe with different emphases on participatory modeling. And that was a big paradigm shift for me, almost the same as when I learned about systems thinking and SD modeling, that combining group process techniques with the use of models can really improve and enhance impact and uptake. So that's became my primary research interest really from that point forward. When I came to South Africa and worked in the ResiMod program as a part of the Association for Water and Rural Development's Resilience in the Limpopo Basin, USAID funded program, and learned a lot more about water, which kind of became my focus then for the next few years gave me a target to aim at and focus my applications for PhD studies around, because otherwise just sending out applications, I want to do system dynamics, really quite broad. And then, yeah, since then I've been here at RISE in southern Sweden. I live in Malmö and work in Lund. And yeah, that's where some of the interesting research that I'll describe a bit later on has been conducted at. But yeah, just to kind of step through this in a way chronologically and logically, in this kind of early phase, maybe some of you also recognize this, but first learning what is SD modeling. I put it in parentheses there because for me it was also learning about modeling in general, and this early mentorship and discussions that I got to have with Andy Ford and Bobby Jeffers and Jake Jacobson, who are people that you may have met at the SD conference if you've been around. They really helped me understand really what are we trying to achieve with models, and what is their role in decision making, more generally, not just when we apply system dynamics models. And that's been a huge boon for me in working with SD models in research, because it helps me to better understand and argue for when an SD approach is useful, and also help me understand the limitations and strengths of other modeling approaches. So that's quite useful when you're getting into SD modeling, I think, to really learn about other modeling methods as well, and not just follow this kind of hammer nail principle. And yeah, I also kind of ran into this limitation in practice, because the modeling that I was doing when you're learning about SD modeling and just building textbook exercises and stuff, you don't really have a goal. What should your model solve? You're just trying to solve the exercise. But I did get a chance to start to work with this at the national labs, and of course, getting to know the SD community was a huge benefit, and it's great that you guys have such an active chapter in South Africa, and I can only recommend to become more involved with the System Dynamics Society whenever you get the chance, because it gives you lots of opportunities to get to know other experts and find new mentors. And I think that's one of the most important things you can do as a researcher, especially in this field, is find good mentors. But in my early stages of learning about system dynamics, I learned about all these beautiful models, and then I ended up building a fairly feedback poor model that was commissioned by this was a task that the Idaho National Laboratory in Southern Idaho was interested in, looking at the storage potentials for biomass pellets. So if you have we grow a lot of corn in the US, and there was a big push for using field residues and things like this for producing biofuels. So the leftover stuff after they've harvested the bits of corn they can use for producing meal for animals, and so can we use this and make it into biomass, and how do we do that in a good way? Because if we take this stuff off the field, it starts to decay. And so this became my master's project and my internship at the national laboratories, and I spent a lot of hours developing this model and going into great detail on biomass pellets and their enzymes. And I couldn't help but think about and look back to when I was learning about system dynamics modeling in the first place, and reading up and building all of these beautiful examples of models from Andrew's book, Andy Ford's book, Modeling the Environment. And I thought, this is really far away from what I was kind of promised. I thought that this would be, discovering really beautifully interesting feedbacks and having aha moments. And in reality, I was just doing a modeling exercise that was within a larger strategic project going on at the National Lab. I learned a lot. It was really good for developing my quantitative modeling skills, but not necessarily the the goal I had in mind. And at the end of the day, the model was just kind of handed off in a report and didn't ever really lead to any significant policy impacts. And that for me was a little bit, of a letdown. But I already had caught the system dynamics bug, and I was super keen to keep using this. And at that time, I learned about this SD project or SD program over in Europe. So this had been my entire reality up until that point, the sagebrush steppe landscape of southern Idaho. So I jumped at the opportunity to trade it out for Europe and see some new landscapes. This is a photo over Bergen, which is the first university hosting in one of the big universities working with systems here in Europe. So I took off over to Europe to do another master's because I figured then I could learn a lot more about system dynamics, and only had a couple of courses and used it for my thesis in the US. And this ended up being one of these really big, important decisions because, it led me to all kinds of new discoveries. I got to learn about the qualitative aspects of the in projects with real context. Met a lot of new mentors and really started to identify my strengths as an SD modeler. So although I dig to get buried into a modeling project and work with these different modeling tools and spend my many hours figuring out if there's a better way I could formulate a certain part of a model or reformulate a module to make it more elegant. I definitely had a lot more fun when I could take the model kind of on the road and get stakeholders to engage with the models and get real-time feedback from people that were really interested in solving these problems. So that's when my focus really shifted towards participatory modeling. Met a lot of nice people. I ended up going to UCL to write my thesis, and here's where I got another lesson about how system dynamics could be applied. Because if you're in a group with people with different skill sets and different strengths, then it really is beneficial to team up. And I think some of you have seen this reading the literature with group model building from David Anderson. And I'm missing the other very important name from our group model building fellows over there in the US, George Richardson. Yeah, they often have published, I mean, you've seen many of their papers, they're usually publishing in a duo because they work in teams of two. And I've asked George, especially over the years at conferences and so on, how about some of these kind of bits that don't really end up in papers. And one of the things that he passed on to me was that, this tandem approach is really a valuable way of going about things, because one person can be the master of the model and the other can be the master of the process. And having that kind of relationship and building that over time can be really fun, really beneficial, and you find that you complement each other in different ways. And I was lucky enough to find that in a group there at UCL. So I was in charge, given my new interest in the participatory aspect. I designed and led these workshops around we were interested in the interactions between the housing stock, how housing is developed or retrofitted for energy efficiency, and the well-being aspects of housing, and what housing is meant to provide is more than just a roof over your head. So we got different groups into the room invited them for workshops, and we started off having sectoral discussions, industry, community, and policymakers from local municipal government, for example, and then we had some different community groups. And each of these group model building sessions or participatory modeling sessions, we focused on their specific issues. But then we also asked questions about the overlap with these other areas of interest to us that we previously identified, and we through kind of snowball effect, once we'd gotten going, then we knew there were certain indicators that we really wanted to explore the overlap in. So I focused on facilitating these conversations and designing the workshops in quite a lot of detail, and how this theory, the theory behind how this specific way of dividing and conquering, and then later bringing these groups together around a more refined model, could lead to improved discussions and maybe improved collaboration among these different sectors to realize the multiple benefits that you would want out of your housing stock. So that was a lot of fun. The finishing stages of that led me into my connection, I guess, a little bit to this group. When I met Jai Clifford Holmes, Dr. Jai Clifford Holmes, many or know of him, consulting job out to work in this SAID project, and the process that I just followed, dividing the industry, community, policy into different groups so that we could have better conversations in those first or early workshops before we started combining the perspectives. It's very similar to what Jai and his group were already starting in the Limpopo Basin, and they had run a few handful or quite a number of qualitative workshops, and they were looking for someone to support this process that could also build a quantitative model. And so I jumped at this opportunity and found my way down to Hoedspruit, and was there for a bit over a year working in this project. It was really a lot of fun, and meeting Jai and working with him and learning how he works with system dynamics and systems thinking was really beneficial. Really great group at Award, and the real fun parts from a quantitative perspective was that they had so much work already done in this catchment that there was integrated downscaled global climate change modeling that had been done, looking at scenarios for how the climate would be changing in the area and the catchment of interest, and a very, very cool simplified water quality modeling tool that's made to use, can be run using very limited data, suiting the context. And those two tools could be integrated, and that was kind of what we came across and decided to do in an SD model, so that we could bring some of these GCC scenarios and water quality scenarios from further upstream, and then we could kind of really focus around where the key problem dynamic was, which was around the mining tailings dam waste, and how that was getting in to the park, and what were some strategies that could maybe, from a systems perspective, improve this. And a big part of getting any kind of forward progress on improving this is first to see that these different actor groups are discussing and able to talk about these challenges in a constructive way. So we built this model in a similar way with a feedback or a sectoral stakeholder approach, and then we brought the sectors together in the model, and in our facilitated workshops through when we had the modeling tool developed and we were ready to test drive it with them, then we assigned them different management actions that they could do, different leverage points in the model, and then we tasked them with developing consensus around what actions they should take, what levers they should pull, and how much. And in this case, it was quite cool because, and this me not having all of the contextual background showing up and only being there for a year, but these different representatives hadn't really been willing to come to meetings all together before. But with having many of them contributed to this model, they had a vested interest in being there and seeing kind of the results and how it was represented. So that we had really strong attendance from all of these sectors at the final workshop where we applied the model. There were some interesting and fun elements in here where we worked with some storytelling aspects and anthropomorphization of different indicators to really improve or in an attempt to enhance the accessibility of the topics and make the model, what the model is representing, a little bit more familiar. And so, yeah, this was a bit how the process went. And you can read about this in the publication in Journal of Simulation from 2021, I think, is around the time we published that. But we had a fun part, and I think there's still some interesting research questions to address here that I've been building into a few different projects here in Sweden. But around this interpretability of causal loop diagrams, so that a lot of the people involved in workshops had seen bits of the model. We really applied this approach that Jai coined the term for modeling in the muddled middle. So just kind of going out whenever we could get time with the people that we were interested in speaking to, and interviewing them and using those interviews to build CLDs in real time and then reflecting the CLD back to them. So a lot of them had familiarity with this kind of language of causal loop diagrams. But then at the same time, we challenged them to not just use the simulation to sit there and try and optimize, but we really wanted them to try and develop their, flex their systems thinking muscle, and based on their understanding of this structure of the model and this system, then we asked them to kind of mentally simulate what they expected to happen. So in each step of this process that we had them using the model, then we asked them to really record what their expectation is, and then run the simulation when they'd reach consensus with their fellows at the same table. And this was the dashboard, and you can see this red line here is our downscale GCC scenario forcing the simulation, and then here's all their different levers, and we color coded these to give them put them in charge. So only the wastewater, so municipal planning, wastewater treatment folks that were at the meeting could decide what these would be and change them. So there was this negotiation process, and it was quite successful. We had a lot of fun as well. And in the end, I unfortunately had to leave South Africa, but that's a story for another time. So then at this stage, I was back in the US. I applied for a lot of PhD projects. I was focused on water because of this great time that I'd had in South Africa. And I've really gained a lot of interest in water as this limiting resource that drives so many different processes in the environment, and also is so important societally. So I ended up at the Technical University of Denmark, as Andreas spoke about earlier. And there I really started to develop some of these questions around a little bit more detail around, what is model accuracy? I've been taught by Andy and in my SDE courses that model accuracy was to represent the system behavior over time in a sufficient way. So you're looking in this more qualitative way of how well can you match the patterns in the data that you have, and how well structurally validate. You can look at Barless's papers for processes around model validation. But from the hydrology and environment and so this was a really good time for me to learn more about these more rigorous model testing in in Denmark. But the thing that came back to me often was this little and he was an engineer by training, was trained. That's how he got into SD by meeting Dennis Meadows. But then he, like the system modelers and good engineers, he specifically would say that it's often that good engineers don't make good system modelers, and I think there's, I mean, this is just a suggestion that he would make, but I think that it holds a little bit of truth when you're used to getting down to p values and r-squared values and confidence intervals and so on. You can get lost in the detail, and that's kind of counterproductive when you're looking to understand systems and working with systems thinking. So these things I found to somewhat hold true working being in an environmental engineering department where I was the only person really applying system dynamics. So what came out of this for me was a lot of learning about these aspects, processes, tools, frameworks. So I focused on supporting to build an integrated water quality models. So this is one of the areas that we know there's quite a gap in terms of having interpretable models that can handle both looking at the hydrology of a system, of a river system or stream system, as it was in this case, and to also capture the integration with water quality parameters, because these things are so interdependent. There's so many complex feedbacks here, and I think there's a lot more work that can be done to continue to advance that. But we ended up with quite an interesting and feedback-rich model here. Highly complicated, and I think there's a lot more analysis that can still be done on that model, maybe at a later stage in another project. But this was one aspect, and then there was also I got the chance to also work a little bit more at the conceptual level with systems thinking, and this DIPSIR framework, which is really interesting for one of my supervisors in China. And then we got a chance to work with the European Environmental Agency and put together a group of case studies, one of which was this ResiMod model that we had built in South Africa, and really looking at, DIPSIR is so widely applied. It's one of these frameworks that many people have heard about, at least over here in Europe. It's crazy widely applied. But then there's about 1,000 different derivatives of this framework, and so we wanted to do a little bit of a sense check of that and motivate for actually a return to kind of what the failure is for DIPSIR in its broad spread is kind of a failure of us to clearly define these aspects of it, which are often not made explicit. They're often implicitly kind of captured in the way that it's described. And actually, I thought that was really interesting, comparing with the different publications that have come out in recent years at the conferences and in the system dynamics review around defining, what is good system dynamics modeling, and some of these kind of articles that have become broader discussions in the community around do we have two different tracks of modeling going on in this society, for example. But it was really fun to write that paper, and again, having this kind of systems thinking background was really useful. But it taught me a lot about coordinating writing papers, because there was a lot of co-authors from a lot of different institutes, and that was quite challenging. But then I come around to where I am now, and I'll wrap this up, but I'll pick a couple of examples. I won't use all of the examples that I put in this presentation, but really when I started my research career in earnest, I had the, as Jai likes to say, my license to practice when I'd obtained my PhD, and then I ended up over here in Sweden, just a short train ride away from Copenhagen. Is really this recognition that applying system dynamics in a big research institute meant that if I wanted to keep working with system dynamics, I couldn't just do water-related projects, because there is a certain amount of power that the funding cycles have. If there's not a research call that really fits the current thinking in system dynamics, or what would be a novel approach using system dynamics, where you can't really motivate for that, then you need to look at other topic areas. And that's what I ended up doing when I showed up at RISE, writing different applications, a lot of applications, and applications at things that were not in my immediate background. So this list over here on the left, or on my left, I guess it's yours as well, is all the different projects that we've won or that I've worked in since I've been here for the last 4 years, and more or less in order. So like working with waste to energy and industrial symbiosis is what I was initially here doing, and that has very little to do with water until you start to really stretch out the system boundary, and so that was good for me to, again, need to tap into that foundational knowledge about how models can be applied. What is our unique offer that we can come with using system dynamics, and where can it really offer this perspective, or a new perspective that might lead to some kind of impactful policy change, or at least impactful paradigm shift in the way we manage under current policies or current legal frameworks. So in that sense, that was one of my kind of high points of learning, is that this, understanding and flexing that systems thinking muscle, when you're reading the news or when you're reading research papers, that you're constantly kind of having this humming in the back of your head. It can be really helpful when you're faced with this kind of crossroads. I think even if you're an established researcher and you've worked a lot in one specific topic area, there's also a lot of fun and new exciting projects that can be had if you branch out a little bit and apply your methodological strengths to a different topic area. So then, yeah, some other lessons about teaching other researchers at SD. I think I can talk a little bit about that when I talk about these projects, maybe. And one of the things that I think many of you, if you're working as a postdoc or you're a bit further along in your research career, have run into this, but that people often get caught up when they see or hear about a system dynamics approach and they haven't learned about it before, and they think, wow, that looks really accessible. It's one of the benefits of our method that we use visual tools to build our models, and they can be quite readily interpreted, especially by a researcher or someone with a modeling background. But that also brings with it a bit of risk that people get the idea that they can just pick it up and run with it immediately. And I think that can be a little bit of a challenge to kind of, it's not so much that you need to be the gatekeeper, but there is some responsibility, I think, that we have as practitioners of system dynamics to ensure that it's, SD is applied rigorously, and with the limitations and caveats that we know that are well documented from research, embarking on qualitative modeling, when we need to be careful that we're not promising things that deliver out of a qualitative modeling process. So some of these project examples, I think this one is quite fun. Corrales. This was an industrial symbiosis project. This was someone had already brought this one to RISE when I started working there, and it sounded like a really fun project to start in. We have industrial symbiosis. It has a lot of actors involved. They need to get on the same page to make decisions. There's obviously a complicated technical component of how should a complex industry hook up to another complex industry and share resources, and what feedbacks are there, and how can you kind of expand this boundary and look at other effects and impacts of the symbiosis societally. So I was very excited to embark on this participatory process, and I went and pitched this to Warm. They're called Warm, as in they use low temperature heat in heat pumps to recover this low temperature heat and use it as a resource. So Warm's whole business model is around that they want to develop these symbioses out of low temperature waste heat all around Sweden and maybe all around Europe, and scale up in that way. And they were looking at they were one of our case studies in this project, and they're based here in Malmö, and they were looking at establishing this isn't text on the slides, but they were looking at establishing a greenhouse. They've done that now. So the greenhouse should use, in the ideal world, they wanted to use waste, but residual CO2 coming from industry. They wanted to use the residual heat. And then they also wanted to potentially take process water, build a greenhouse for farming tomatoes, and then create a kind of aquaponic system to harvest fish, and maybe then in the future add additional apps or things that they could create. And I think they're on their journey, and that's a very complex world of developing a business model that's also supporting sustainability approaches, or absolute sustainability in some ways. But we thought, and I thought, that we could show up and get them to see, well, here we have this unique modeling approach. We can help you. We can help you by building a model that will support you in representing your processes to other actors that you want to involve in your symbiosis. Maybe you can show how the symbiosis could work to potential investors. And we scoped out all these kind of things, but when I came with like a prototype of a model that showed kind of the interactions between the development of their symbiosis and the workforce that they might need, and this kind of classic project management model with potential for schedule pressure on workers and seasonal harvesting, and how this could affect their efficiency and bottom line, and so on. And with some available data that I had, I didn't have a lot at that point because we'd hoped to collect more from them. But I showed them this model in a little dashboard that I made in Stella, and they were like, well, that's really interesting, but we're not really that we don't need more models right now. We have a model. So we didn't really get anywhere with that. And in that first phase, but we still had a research project to run. We still needed to develop a systems model. It was written in our research approach. So we wanted to do it in a way that would be helpful for them. So what ended up happening is that we continued to investigate their problem space, what challenges they were facing. And we decided to take a more technical modeling approach rather than a participatory modeling approach, and build a model of their potential future greenhouse that could be used for testing these different operational uncertainties, and then analyze, was this useful for them or not in this research project. And we're currently writing a paper about this, but I think what was really interesting here is that as we came back and we met new people from their organization and different people, as we got more access and we developed more of a relationship with them over a couple of year period, they started to really become interested in exactly these things that we had tried and pitch them in the beginning, so that we could show them some of these we could show them visually and put a dashboard in front of them that they could use for real-time scenario assessment and asking questions across their own, internally across their own departments, but then also potentially with their external collaborators, because we were finding out they were also getting some of these aspects of their business model as supplied from growers in the Netherlands and things like this. So there's still a lot of potential here, and we're still discussing with them. And so now I've talked through most of what I have a couple of pictures for, but we still had a participatory element around this. We still had a way to engage with them, even though we didn't have a group model building session where we went through all these phases of best practices for scripts, because that wasn't really applicable in this case. But what we did still work with them around systems thinking and scenario development, and that helped us inform a little bit more democratically, let's say, how we then delivered our scenarios to them. So instead of us just showing up and saying, well, these are the scenarios, we've optimized the model and we think that this is what you should do, we instead, involved them a little bit around understood a little bit more about their business approach and their planning and the uncertainties that they were most interested in. And then we worked a little harder on those points to either in this develop those as kind of external inputs that we could do sensitivity analysis around. And yeah, bullseye diagrams, super helpful when you're working with external clients or people that aren't interested in research, and maybe they don't have it in them to have a look at the model. It can get you on the same page in terms of understanding that, what data the model's creating, what you're driving the model with, and then what you're definitely leaving out. Ford's got a good section in his modeling the environment book about these bullseye diagrams, and they're a little bit low resolution in this day of AI and so on, but they're quite useful for providing a scope of your model. So we used other models in the literature and built them in using system dynamics so that they could get these kind of scenarios in real time. And we grouped their scenarios that we got into different overall themes, and then we ran these scenarios and showed them. So these slides are a little bit of detail about the model, the greenhouse model, how it works. And I will hop over that for now because there's a lot of that data. And I think it's more interesting to talk about maybe another project. But yeah, I think I've already talked about some of these key lessons that we got out of this project, and I would recommend many of you, if you're starting your research, or even if you're far into it and you've already read this paper once, go back and read it again. So this Meadows and Robinson, the electronic oracle paper from 2002, where they talk about this interfacing with clients. I mean, I think it applies to a lot of us in a lot of research projects, whether we're interfacing with other researchers and other institutes that we collaborate with, or even other modelers in our own organizations. I think it's really nicely written and can be really useful to think about how you're approaching modeling and how you're approaching the relationship with the person that's interested in solving these problems. And yeah, not to be afraid of challenging them. We did this at several points when they wanted a black box model. We said, well, we can do a black box model, but I don't know that you'll like that or it will be that valuable for you. And then it was also a long-term process. We allowed, cooling off time between meetings. We met with new people and expanded the actor group internally. That also helped generate more momentum around how we could use these models. And yeah, it took some time to get them on board, but kind of came in a little bit too hard and strong there with dashboards and feedback and all of these things. So it's a little bit about walking before you run, I think. Yeah, this is more of a systems thinking approach, so I'm going to skip through that one because we're running out of time. I will talk about this model. I think it's really nice one that was a part of my colleague Andreas Nicolaitis Lindqvist, his PhD, and that I got to contribute to when I came to RISE. And this is water related again. So you get to get your topic interest research going on, even if you work in things that are a little bit off topic on occasion as a researcher in a big institute. But this paper we looked at, Andreas had this great idea, can we look at using this tool, dynamic or marginal cost curves, and can we make dynamic marginal cost curves? Really elegant thinking from his side, I have to say. And it was really fun to work on this. So if you're not familiar with marginal cost curves, it's a tool used to often rank kind of our environmental challenges and measures. So it's been used a lot in kind of expert derived, and you might have a basic kind of spreadsheet where you say, all right, here we have measure A, the width of the bar is how much potential that measure has at mitigating some issue that you have, and the height of the bar indicates the cost related to it. So out of that, you can get this curve that you see in the lower picture. And they're really useful from a decision-making point of view because you get so much information, actionable information in just one snapshot look at it. But these marginal cost curves, the way that they're developed, they often don't have any kind of reference to interaction effects, which is quite interesting. That assuming that the measures are independent and don't take into account ancillary costs or benefits. So just the measure itself, if we need to build a dam, what does it cost to build the dam? Not what benefits do we get besides having the dam? Just the cost and the impact on the problem of interest. And then temporal aspects are just not really found because, as I say, these things are often developed kind of in a static nature, and then you have quite some assumptions about how long it will take to implement said measures. So we worked together to develop this off of a previous marginal cost analysis or marginal cost curve that was done on an island community in Sweden. And we use some of that data to develop pretty much a hypothetical island city in Sweden as our case study, and then develop these marginal cost curves into a dynamic model where we had some innovation loops around, in this case, we were interested in distributed water technologies and how they compare to a centralized water solution. So drilling a new hole for a new well in existing, using the groundwater resource, or having a distributed water solution like gray water reuse or vacuum toilets, et cetera. And how would this impact kind of the fee adjustment for the municipality that needs to recover their costs for having their water distribution network? So there's a bit of this kind of death spiral investigation that we could do. But then we could look at combinations of measures over time and look at the actual benefit of the measure given its temporal delay to be implemented. So a lot of distributed solutions, super fast to implement, even if they come at a higher cost and at a cost to the customer or a cost to the household, versus a centralized solution that might be taking 4 or 5 years by the time you've investigated, set up a site, had to look at your groundwater level sufficient, and then set up the treatment. So comparing those things, then we could get this kind of this really cool heat map. This was one that Andreas developed, where we could look at these different combinations of performance across a lot of different indicators. So this is the ancillary costs or benefits, and then this overall aggregated performance across each of these categories. So cost is one thing, average cost. Then the total groundwater usage. So this is an ancillary service. So limiting our groundwater usage is a better score than using more groundwater, for example. The total capacity for service for the households in the community, and the net water availability. So how much water is available over the time period of interest. and the price. And you can see as we get more and more distributed, the price goes up, and that's under the assumptions that we've built in the model about how much it costs to install distributed solutions today. But that can change over time, and we hope to use this model a bit more. But there's kind of limited demand. It's becoming more drought and water scarcity is becoming more of a topic of interest here in Sweden, but Sweden is historically quite water rich. So even though this is changing, it's not like we have a direct use to go and apply this model. There's a few different municipalities where it's of interest, but we hope that maybe people in this kind of forum would see this approach and find it useful. So you can have a look at that publication on Journal of Environmental Management if you're interested. Yeah, I threw this one in just for fun, but we won't have time for that. There's another bullseye diagram. I'm telling you, they're quite interesting, quite useful. But yeah, some concluding thoughts, and then leave it at that. So I recommend finding good mentors. I have a few pictures of my good mentors. Dr. Clifford Holmes is one of them. These gentlemen pictured here, people I've seen over and over again at the SD conferences that are usually available to give advice and tips. So use your community and find your mentors. It can really help you and make it a lot more fun to work in system dynamics. It's one of our strengths, I think, in this community. I've just made another nudge at your integrity, modeling integrity, and sticking to your methodological guns. Have a look at that Meadows Robinson paper if you haven't before, or again if you have. And yeah, having some practice explaining this unique perspective can help you kind of find your in a new context if there isn't a lot of knowledge already about system dynamics, and just trying and failing and getting better and reflecting on how you can convince and encourage people that SD is the right tool when it's the right tool. And yeah, don't try and model something that's not suited to SD, but you might be surprised what is dynamic in nature in terms of problems when you get to know a problem more in detail. And yeah, back to what I said at the beginning, building some boring models or not so beautiful models is part of the game. I got that advice from Andy when I first started, and Jake as well. You need to build some kind of less than exciting models to kind of build your skills, and also maybe just to build your research portfolio out until you kind of get the chance to make these really cool, beautiful, feedback-rich models, kind of what I showed with this dynamic marginal cost curves. Yeah, that's all for me. Naren almost hit the time, but thanks for listening. And if you want to contact me, this is my contact details. And I'm not sure if the format is questions, or I'll let Andries.
Yes, Shane, I'm going to allow opportunity for questions, everybody. But Shane, before we start that, thank you very much. I found this fascinating. I'm sitting in a strange place when it comes to system dynamics, but more about that if there's an opportunity to ask my questions. What I'm going to ask first is that if anybody in the audience has got a question, just raise your hand, and what I'll do is I'll unmute you and give you the opportunity to ask your question. If you're struggling, you're welcome to type in the chat. I think Shane is looking at the chat as well. So yes, please, if there's anybody who's got a question, please raise a hand. Otherwise, I'm going to start, and you guys know me. I don't stop when I start asking questions.
Yeah, that's great. I'm having a look at the chat. I see a lot of nice introductions, but no questions so far.
Okay, then I'm going to start off and ask you a first question. And I think it links to that good systems modelers are not necessarily good engineers. Being called a bucket chemist is sort of where I put myself. But the question is, does the same hold when it comes to researcher versus practitioner? And when I say practitioner, I mean somebody who's trying to solve business problems real time, where the pressure is that, it's good and well you want to research it, but we want the answer by next week, Friday. Any thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and as I was describing that, I mean, I see that it's kind of a maybe it's even a little bit of a cliche way to look at it. I mean, everybody's an individual. Being an engineer doesn't put you in a box any more than being an artist puts you in another. So drawing stereotypes or generalizations like that is always going to come with a lot of asterisks. But I think we see that as well at Rise, and I would say what you're describing and I think especially this project that I talked about, the Corrales project, where we really we're still doing research, but in this case, we do have a client and we do want to deliver something useful for them. That's part of the way that the research is built. And, we're dealing with their business deadlines. They're trying to get all of these, they're trying to get permits to get their greenhouse built, and they're trying to understand if they can use the different gases and stuff that they plan to from a certain industry. And there were a lot of, things happening in that project. But long story short, it was really useful in that project that my colleague Andrew Simons, who has a background as a process engineer from the mining industry in Australia, it was super useful for him to be there, because for him to replicate one of these models from the literature that had to do with the thermodynamics of a greenhouse it took him a bit of time, but he was able to churn that thing out in maybe a week and a half or something like this. So we had something to bring and take and show to Warm. That's not something that I have the background to be able to very quickly go and do. So there, certainly I can see that if you're, depending on what the nature of your role is, and what the nature of what service you're delivering, if it's research or if it's a deliverable that's needed at a certain time, then of course there is value in being able to do what the client needs when the client needs it. So does that answer, or at least give a little more context to that, Andres?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
I don't see any hands, so I'm going to keep going. So I've got another
please.
question. Yeah, and I've got another question. And I think you touched on it somewhat, but sometimes you build a simulation for people who have got a certain expectation of what the outcome should be. And then you say, no, you're wrong, because all these factors interact with each other, and it actually turns in a completely different direction than you anticipate. Now, how do you get those people to buy back into the process to say, well, we trust the model enough that we are willing to look at it we trust the model enough to trust the result, to be willing to change our minds?
Yeah, that's a very classic conundrum. I think that one comes up quite often, because we come with a different perspective, and we address complexity in a way that often leads us to counterintuitive results. I mean, it's almost what we want to find when we build a model, is something that surprises us, that we couldn't get to on our own, looking at it from our own biases or previous knowledge. So I think we've seen that I saw that in my work a lot in Denmark, in also a bit in that project in South Africa. And I think one of the ways that I've addressed that is to give that individual, if it's an individual or if it's a group, if it's a representative stakeholder group in that sense, to give them a little bit more attention, because often if they have such strong opinions that they want to reject the model, then it's often also because they care really a lot about the outcomes of this project. Even if if the results are going against what they personally believe, then one of the remedies can be potentially that you simply spend more time trying to capture, questioning what details it is that they think you've maybe left out, or why it is that they disagree with the logic, and just being very open for that criticism. And yeah, a little bit of special attention paid to their needs. So you're renaming variables, so you're changing your data set in a way that, I mean, you're using their data, assuming that it's valid data and not manufactured data. Of course, not that you're changing the model results by forcing it with manufactured data or something. But that's one way. And then the other way would be, I guess, from the group process perspective, that if you that actually, I have a pretty good example of that from this Corrales project, because we had showed this modeling approach in the prototype model to the CEO of the company, the guy who had started it, and he's the one that said, no way, we don't need this. We already have models. And that was pretty much, yeah, stopped us in our tracks for a while. But then we had continued to develop towards, delivering them this more comprehensive greenhouse model. And we started to also still show them kind of the benefits of system dynamics through that. And that was to others in his organization that he trusted. And once we started to get a critical mass of interest and trust from others that he worked with, then he could reevaluate the model and could start to see the benefits. So it's also kind of who brings the message. And us as researchers, as an external party to his company, we maybe get perceived as not understanding that he has a business to run and so on, which we could very well be guilty of. So I think both parties learned a lot on that, but that was the way to get them in, is, yeah, power of peer pressure, plain and simple, I guess.
Okay, thank you. That is an interesting answer. I've also had experience where I built what I would call a ski lift model, which is basically a simplified version that proves that their point is valid under very specific conditions. So it's a very artificial model. Well, artificial, it's real to the point where you can show this is what you see, but look what happens when reality kicks into it. But I'm going to stop my questions. I see there's a question in the chat from Jess that says, thank you for an excellent presentation with variety of applications of SD. Any key learnings from doing stakeholder views-based CLD development? Please share.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just reread that one. Key learnings from doing stakeholder views-based CLD development. Yeah, I mean, building CLDs with stakeholders can feel like quite a messy process at times. So I think one of the things that benefited me when I first started with that was having built a lot of models before. So I had a kind of quiver of archetypes and ways of conceptualizing stocks and flows so I could quickly kind of interpret information that I was getting from people into a CLD. But I think that this is something where we definitely need a lot more research. I mean, you can look at best practice around developing CLDs and the research that's been done to try and isolate the impact of the facilitator, the impact of the tool on the group outcomes, and even just the research around how best to measure the outcomes of interventions with SD models. But I guess you're welcome to write follow-up questions if I'm not really answering the core of your question there. It's quite a broad one, but bringing stakeholder views into CLDs, I think, is made much easier when you've practiced a lot building CLDs yourself. And then besides that, it's a lot of facilitation training. I think getting much better at not being reactive and keeping a meta perspective over the process, and also just developing your own style. That's also what they taught us a lot in the Netherlands. Is feel free to be yourself. If you're also inextricably tied to the process, so you want to remain objective, but you also want to be representing yourself. I can see there's some frenzied typing going on. I see the dots dotting, but Magesh is working on a follow-up, I think.
Yeah, no hands raised, so I keep going. So I've got a last question for you. And that says basically, we as system dynamicists love and understand time series, and we can see the beauty emerging and the counterintuitive outcomes emerging out of this time domain series. But when you're working with business people, often they're only looking for an answer. And I like the idea of the marginal cost.
Oh, I think we lost Andres.
Yes, apparently we
He was
did.
just, what a cliffhanger. He was just launching into a
Yes.
complicated question about how you interpret time series data or make people interested in it.
Yes. Well, I will jump in then, Dr. Shane. Thank you so much for the presentation. I do have a few questions of my own, but I'll keep them for later. I'll probably email you if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
And
Anyone that's attended or views the recording is welcome to get in touch.
lovely. Thank you so much. And I think I will close this session by sharing our next events, if that's okay with you. Dr. Shane, again, thank you so much. This has been a very interesting session. I think there is so much we can discuss, but of course, time is limited. Again, thank you so much. We hope to see you again in our events, either our conference or workshops. You're very welcome to join us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and I want to just round off and say as well that I'm working together with a group of people here in Sweden, Denmark, Norway to develop a chapter in the Nordic countries, because we're too small individually to make our own chapters really go. But I think I know that the SA chapter, like you guys, are one of the ones that I really look up to and think we can learn a lot from. So I think it could be really nice to maybe at the conference or this year, or maybe outside of the conference, to get together with some of the people volunteering and driving the SA chapter. If we could learn some things and collaborate, it would be wonderful. But yes, please go forward with your agenda, next steps.
Yeah. And about collaborations, absolutely. We are very open to collaborate with other chapters and also to learn, because I think we are there when we are always trying to find a better way to reach more people, to improve learning opportunities and so on. So I think collaboration is the way forward, not competition.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll quickly share my screen just to go through the last slides and upcoming events. I hope you can all see it. Can you? Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So our upcoming events, we have actually a very busy year. We have had a busy year so far. And this month, we still have a feedback session. So I think this is a really nice way of getting PhD students and master's students to basically reach out to more experienced modelers, but also peers, and ask questions, share ideas, so we can provide feedback. I see this is a very safe environment to do that, so please join. We already have one presenter, would be Dumizani Manzini from Pretoria, but we still have one presenter slot available. We maybe have it. So if you're interested in presenting, please drop me an email. This is my contact. And the format is usually more about discussion than presentation. So we have like 15 minutes for presentation, 30 minutes for discussion and feedback. All right. And we also have the third stream of our Learning Hub. It's coming next month already. So if you don't know the Learning Hub, you should. I've been, I would say, introduced to System Dynamics by the Learning Hub back in 2022 or 23. I don't remember. But we are sponsored by ICE Systems, so we get Stella software for the duration of the stream. We have 3 weeks. So one is for teaching, learning, very interactive, learn by doing. Then we have another week for individual feedback. So you work on your own, you get back, and then we can build something else together. And then we have final presentations in the 3rd week. So in total is like 4 days of contact. And it's open to all. It's free, so please join us. It'll be like a pleasure to have more people joining as we progress. I think we are now in the 8th editions. Yeah, 8th edition. So it's Andrews and Cornet running this amazing work. And what else we have? We have also our seminar, I think, which I didn't add. But anyways, we have the conference. So every year Nalini is the conference chair, and she organizes this conference. We have a lineup of amazing speakers. We have workshops. We have presenters. And this year is very special because it'll be like a free opportunity. So it's open to all. It's virtual. So we hope that everyone that has access to the internet can join us. Submissions are now open. Please register and join. So here we have more details. Submissions will be open until the 15th of September, if I'm not mistaken. And please stay connected. So we have our website active. We're very active on LinkedIn as well, and our YouTube channel where you can find all our seminars that are open and presentations. If you have any question, if you have ideas for collaborations, if you have, I don't know, you'd like to present something, a workshop or a seminar, please reach out, get in touch. This is our email for contact. And that's it. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for everyone that joined, and I hope to see you back. Maybe one of our next events. It'll be really nice to see you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.